Now, I got a lot of people who were really mad at me when I had the Houston Texans ranked inside my top 10 defenses for this year, man. And for all you people that were saying, man, JT, why do you got the Texans on here, man? Like, the reason why I got the Texans on there is because they're going to have probably the second best young defense in the NFL this season, right behind the Seattle Seahawks. Like, just be honest, unless you're a Texans fan, a lot of you guys were not watching the Houston Texans last year, because if I ask you who Jalen Petrie is, most of you guys are not going to know who he was, and he was probably the best rookie safety in the NFL last year. He led the Houston Texans in tackles and interceptions as a safety. A lot of you guys know who Jaquan Brisker is because most people were tuning in to the Chicago Bears playing last season for Justin Fields. But if you really watched the Houston Texans defense last year, there's no way you should not know who Jalen Petrie is. You give DeMeco Ryans a Jalen Petrie, fam? Jalen Petrie is probably going to be an all-pro this year. And then they signed Jimmy Ward. So they have one of the best safety duos in the NFL this year. And you look at Derek Stingley, like, I know Derek Stingley got drafted high and we kind of forgot about him, but the reason why we forgot about him was because of who his head coach was, Lovie Smith. And Lovie Smith held back Derek Stingley. Like, Lovie Smith put Derek Stingley, one of the most talented cornerbacks to come out in recent memory, in a system that kind of brought down his strengths and what he did well. So you got DeMeco Ryans, somebody who knows what he's doing on the defense side of football. He's going to turn Derek Stingley into a star. And then you also have Steven Nelson. Steven Nelson is pretty solid. Yeah, I think that he's 30 years old going into this year, or he'll end up turning 30. But Steven Nelson is at least able to give you solid cornerback play. Like, with Steven Nelson starting, you're never going to have to worry about, getting torched on that side of the field. Like, he's going to be a solid corner. Now, he's not going to give you elite cornerback play, but he's going to give you solid cornerback play where that cornerback 2 position is not going to be a liability. And you look at this defense, they were not good against the run last year. I think they gave up like the 8th or 6th most rushing yards in NFL history. Their run defense was absolutely terrible, man. Like, it was like a buffet every time you had the opportunity to play the Houston Texans. When you saw that defense, you knew all you had to do was run the football and they weren't going to be able to stop you. So what did they do to improve that? They signed Sheldon Rankins in free agency. You also re-signed Malik Collins. Sheldon Rankins is really good against the run. Same thing with Malik Collins. As a matter of fact, when Malik Collins was on the field, the Houston Texans run defense was better versus how it performed when Malik Collins was on the sideline. And then you have Jonathan Grenard. Now, Jonathan Grenard, he dealt with some injuries last season, and plus he just wasn't that good when he was on the field. But the year prior, he had 8 sacks. So hopefully you can get Jonathan Grenard bouncing back and playing at the level that he was the season prior to last year. And then you also traded up for Will Anderson, who was regarded as the best pass rusher in this draft class, arguably the best defensive prospect coming out of this draft outside of Jalen Carter. So there are high expectations for Will Anderson. And when you look at some of these pass rushers who have been drafted high over the last couple of drafts, your Nick Bosa's, Joey Bosa's, your Michael Parsons and whatnot, if you draft a pass rusher in the top 15 that is considered to be an instant impact kind of player, most of those guys end up being really good early on. You look at how Aiden Hutchinson played last year. So if Will Anderson is that good, that's what a lot of people were saying when he was coming out of Alabama, he should be a guy who could give you 8 to 9 sacks right away, which would be really good. And at linebacker, you signed Denzel Perryman and Corey Littleton. Those guys are also going to help improve your run defense. Corey Littleton had a pretty good stretch when he was with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I don't know what the hell happened ever since he left LA, but he hasn't really been the same. But last year, he was pretty good. So DeMeco Ryans brings him in. And then you have Denzel Perryman, who's been playing the best football of his career over the last 2 years. Last season, not 2022, but 2021, he was a Pro Bowler, and he's one of the better linebackers in the league when it comes to defending against the run. And you also are going to get that out of Corey Littleton. Now, you got Henry To'oTo'o, who I think is going to be more of a special teams guy. I think he's going to be more of a backup this year. So I'm not really expecting too much out of him. I think Denzel Perryman and Corey Littleton are going to be their two best linebackers. And then you got Christian Harris, who made some pretty flashy plays during his rookie season. DeMeco Ryans played linebacker at a really high level during his playing days in the NFL. So I think he's going to get the most out of that position. You saw how good the 49ers linebackers were under DeMeco Ryans. They had the best linebacking group in the NFL when he was their defensive coordinator. And then you look at the secondary, like I said earlier, like this secondary is going to be pretty good. Like, I know the Houston Texans on paper, it doesn't look like they're going to have a great defense. You look at their defense on paper and you look at it and you nod your head. You say, yeah, like, it could be okay. But when you look at DeMeco Ryans' impact and how this defense is going to respond under him, I think this is going to be a top 10 defense. And it's going to be one of those defenses that are going to be good, not because of the young players that they have, but also because they're going to be very well coached. So I think the Houston Texans are going to have a top 10 defense this year. And I can understand if you can kind of say, I don't really know about that. Like, I get your reason to be questionable of if the defense for Houston is going to be that good this year, even if you're a Texans fan. But I just think that DeMeco Ryans is going to have such a big impact. I think he's a really good defensive mind. And with the young players that he's going to be getting, I think that this defense is going to be good enough to be in the top 10. Like, you're going to have Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley, who should both play at Pro Bowl caliber levels at worst under DeMeco Ryans. And you got Jimmy Ward. So you're going to have a really good back end when you look at that secondary. You're going to have two really good corners. Well, Steven Nelson's going to be solid and Derek Stingley should be elite. So I think that the Texans defense is being a little bit underlooked going into this year. It's like, I think people know that the Texans defense is going to be good, but I don't think they're expecting it to be great by how I'm expecting it to be great. But you guys give me your comments and thoughts down below.